Okay, we're going to go ahead and graph number 32. So once again, when I'm going to graph these functions, I have to kind of analyze what's happening first before I can begin. So right off the bat, I see that my amplitude is changing. I have an amplitude of 3. I'm graphing the sine curve, so I should know the shape of the sine curve. I should know what I'm after. I see that I have a plus 3 pi over 4, so that means I've got a phase shift. And subtract 2 over here means my midline is going to be going down too. I've got a vertical translation. So all of those things I have to keep track of before I start graphing. So let's put in our phase shifting and our vertical translation so we can find our midline. Let's get our phase shift and our midline first. You always want to get your midline in first because remember the sine curve graphs on the midline. It starts on the midline. So down 2, so I'm going to come down here, down 2, drawing my midline. And then we're going to the left, 3 pi over 4. So remember, the scale on this is counting by pi over 4. So this is like negative 1 pi over 4, negative 2 pi over 4. So negative 3 pi over 4 is right here. So we're going to go ahead and draw in that phase shift. So I know my sine curve starts right there. Sine curve always starts on the midline, so I know it's going to start in that point. Now I have to figure out what it's going to do. So we need to figure out what the period is. So remember, the period is always 2 pi divided by the absolute value of b. And in this scenario, b, that's our b is 1. So the period is just 2 pi. So by the time you go 2 pi spacing, you should get 1 sine curve. So 2 pi spacing on this grid paper is like 8 grid marks. So my sine curve should end right there. And you could count that backwards from 2 pi. So here's 2 pi. You could count back 1, 2, 3, because remember we shifted it left 3. You could do it that way also if you wanted. But that's how it starts. Starts right here on our midline, and then we end at 2 pi spacing. So remember, we've got these key points that we have to put in. My amplitude is 3. So I know I'm going to go up 3 spaces from the midline and down 3 spaces from the midline. And it looks like if I go down 3 spaces of the midline, I'm going to go off my grid paper. So I'm just going to go guess where that point is going to be when I get to it. But I kind of want to figure out how far apart each of those points should be. So I know, remember, sine curve starts at the origin. It goes up, which is part 1, comes down, part 2, goes down again, part 3, and then back up again, part 4. That's how I get my 5 key points. So I'm going to take the period and divide it by 4. And that'll tell me my count, which is pi over 2. So every pi over 2 spacing, I should put a point. So and my sine curve is positive, so it's going to go up. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to go up 3 spaces, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to go over pi over 2 spacing to put that point in. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to come back down 3 and over pi over 2. Puts me on my midline. Then I've got to go down 3, which I'm going to be off my graph paper, but I'm going to guess it's going to be about right here. And then back up 3. And right there over 2. So let's sketch one cycle in there. Okay, and let's just keep following that pattern. So 1, 2, 3, over 2. Okay, and then we'll go the other direction. And I think that's about all we can get on our graph paper. So there's our sine curve. So remember, your sine curve always starts on the midline, so you need to get your midline drawn in first. If you have any phase shifting, put that in. Get your starting point for your sine curve in, and then from there, figure out how far apart the key points should be.